welcome to This Week in Dioramas. I am your host, TechChucker. Now, if you aren't familiar with how this show operates, every week I go through Instagram looking for the coolest looking dioramas and I showcase them right here on the show. If you would like to be showcased in a future episode, all you need to do is upload your diorama pictures to Instagram and tag them with the hashtag ThisweekInDioramas. Now, we've got another amazing showcase lined up for you again this week, and we also have another guest. 2 weeks in a row we've got guests. I really like this format. I hope you like this format as well. Let me know in the comments below what you're thinking of this format with the guests, but we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right on into the showcase and introduce you to our guest. We are here with my guest, Oilers Workshop, Jordan. I appreciate very much you coming on the show as my second guest. I'm super excited to have you, and I'm very excited to have this new format. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to get to know you a little bit. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to talk a little bit about your history in dioramas. That way then those who maybe don't know you, which you're at Oilers Workshop on YouTube, you're also at Oilers Workshop on Instagram, then maybe they can get a little bit more information about you. And if they're not already following you or subscribed, they can go ahead and do that after the show. Stay here, watch the show, and then go subscribe. All right, so first things first, tell me a little bit about what got you into making dioramas.
Man, so I'll try to do the short version, but I've been fascinated with miniatures, dioramas, props, but mostly from film my whole life. And I think I've kind of pinpointed the moment that kind of my miniature love journey. I remember I was about 8 years old, playing with Legos on the living room floor of my friend's house on summer vacation. And I had never watched Star Wars from start to finish. I was really young, so I'm running in the room, whatever. But my mom put it on VHS while I was playing with Legos on summer break for me. And she's reading a book and I'm watching Star Wars. And as I'm watching the first Star Wars, I'm slowly putting my Legos down and amazed at home. And I ended up watching all 3 movies in a row with not even looking away. And my mom at the end, she realized I was so fascinated by this. She's like, "You do know that all of that stuff isn't real." And I'm like, "What?" But
you're like, "You blown my mind."
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, "What?" So I was old and it was young enough before CG and all that stuff had existed. It was right before all that started to happen. And my mom told me, she's like, all of those spaceships and the Death Star, that is all miniatures. It was all made by somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think that moment, that was just this epiphany moment for me where I realized, you can make that. You can physically make that if you want to. And pretty much since that moment forward, my entire artistic journey with everything I've done is dictated by wanting to understand how things are made and being fascinated by the process behind, creating anything, especially for film, but miniatures specifically, but really anything, visual effects, special effects. I've always loved all of that. And that's kind of how I got into wanting to do diorama miniatures and all that.
So what was kind of the first area of miniatures that you got into? Was it dioramas or was it props, or where did you start? Where did little Jordan begin?
The spaceships were probably the biggest thing when I was younger, because you're that young and you're totally on your own, you don't really have a guide. You're trying to figure out how do I put this together? For some reason, terrain, I couldn't wrap my head around that. So I used to constantly cut up cardboard and poster board and tape stuff together and glue things together and spray paint it. And then my dad, he was also into some of the same stuff. And so we would go buy model kits and mess with model kits. And I would always try to modify them and kit bash them, before I knew what that was. And so it was vehicles and vehicular stuff, trying to make spaceships, and sure, they were pretty janky, but it was an expression of what I was trying to do.
So for the less than 1% of my viewership that is less than, I guess, 30 years old. YouTube didn't exist back when we were kids, and so we had to make up what we were doing and come up with this stuff. So that's why it was much harder. And today, now, is such a great time where if you don't know how to do it, you can Google it if you don't want to make up the method yourself. But I kind of enjoy seeing your work because it seems like you're discovering how to do these things on your own. Would you say that you've had any specific influences that have kind of driven your style? Because I feel as though you have a very distinct style when it comes to the work that you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's when you say that, I had the experience with other art forms because I used to draw all the time growing up. I did drafting and architectural, like drafting in high school, mechanical drafting. But I found whenever I was taught a method, I got stuck. So when I was in like elementary school and my teacher's like, this is how you do this with crayons.
Oh, okay.
Hard time thinking outside of what I was told. So I actually learned to kind of veer away from being instructed and just try to learn how a tool works, or try to learn how a chemical reacts to something, or how a glue works, and not follow instructions. Because when I do that, I find that like my creative ability kind of gets boxed in.
Sure.
And so I like to just learn a ability or learn how a tool works, and then just explore that. And I find I am able to come up with more on my own and do that. But I do have, people that I've liked over the years. But most of my influence when it comes, like I said before, is really from film. Like, my quote unquote heroes, you might say, when it comes to the art world, are all visual effects artists or people who run visual effects studios.
Sure.
Richard Taylor, who runs What a Workshop, or Rick McCallum, who's one of the lead model makers for ILM. Or Stan Winston, who did all the visual effects for like a lot of different sci-fi films. I've always like read the Cinefex magazines and looked into all of the extra features on videos because I'm trying to like wrap my brain about how they make anything from a robotic dinosaur to a rock formation.
Sure. So one of the other things that I've noticed watching your both your channel, but also your Instagram is you're not just doing dioramas and even miniatures. I noticed that you also work in leathercraft and metalwork. It looks like you do some electronics, which I can imagine some of those techniques and whatnot can certainly help over in the diorama world. But what other hobbies do you have? Because it seems like you're a little similar to me in that you probably have a lot of different interests that you explore. So how many different hobbies would you say, or I guess arts that you really deep dive into?
Like I was kind of briefly saying, I've done a lot over the years, but like actively right now, I mean, it's dioramas. I've kind of paused on like the leathercraft stuff because I've gotten so much interest in the diorama stuff, but I would like to get back to I've done drawing and drafting, and I play guitar. I used to play drums and in high school jazz band, but I never actually owned a drum set. I always had to play the school one. I collect comic books and sell comic books. Man, there's a lot of stuff. Like I'm constantly trying to avoid new hobbies because like there's too many things I like. But
I get that.
Yeah, learning that interest though is good. I mean, because it's really informed me of a lot of little things that have helped me gather skills like you were kind of alluding to over the years that I can apply to what I'm doing now. So
sure.
Let me grab this real quick. I made this before The Mandalorian was ever a thing.
That is sweet.
A steel Mandalorian helmet, and Epicura 3D, that paper template designing program to build this in the computer, because I learned how to do modeling in high school, 3D modeling, and then I printed out a template in Epicura, and then I traced it out into steel, and then I taught, I bought a cheap welder and learned how to weld. But like I pick a thing and hyper focus until I feel I've gotten somewhere, and then I move on. And so right now I'm kind of hyper focused on dioramas, and I'll probably be there forever now that I'm there. Something I've loved my whole life, but each thing has kind of been something that's allowed me to progress to the next thing. So I encourage people, with that said, not to like just search when they're looking for, sorry, there's a truck driving by. I encourage people not to box themselves in when they're looking for how to do stuff for their dioramas, to just search how to do the miniature this or how to do the miniature that. Watch anything that you might like. You know, watch a cosplay video, watch a welding video. You might discover something that can actually inform you of how to do something else that you want to with miniatures.
Yeah, I think that's great, really good advice, and I actually unknowingly do that a lot. You know, I watch a lot of woodworking videos and a lot of other one scale stuff, and you start seeing how things are constructed, so then you can see how you should construct it in a 1/12 scale, because a lot of the realism, especially the realism that you put into your work, is just real life detail shrunk. And it's so cool, and that actually is a really good segue, which I didn't plan this segue, but take it when it comes to you. I had asked you to send me some pictures of your first diorama. Now, I understand as a kid you did a lot of stuff, but this is the first that you sent as an adult, and it looks to be a cowboy Iron Man display piece. It's amazing. I love the colors, but is that real metal? No.
So
wow.
I love the found object type of building as well. I don't do a lot of it right now because I'm just not doing a lot of it. But
sure.
It's mostly found objects, and that is something that I'm a big advocate of if you can combine it with other skills. And so this is kind of the result of me attempting that the first time when I had tools and time to do that as an adult.
So what was this inspired based off of a comic book, or is this something that you just came up with number one, him being kind of a cowboy? What kind of brought this about?
So yeah, like I said, I had warned you I have a tendency to be long-winded, but I wouldn't know how to explain it other than to say, like, my name for my profile is Euler Shop. Euler is the name of my steampunk character that I created for myself.
Okay.
He is an engineer, and he designed the ship, the Selenium Sail. Now, it's pretty nerdy for you there.
Well, we're all nerds here. I mean, look at the content of this show. It's we expect nerds to be here.
Right. So that's essentially what it was. It was me and a group of friends kind of coming up with ideas for characters, just really for the fun of it. And the kind of character I realized is sort of a mirror of me. It's sort of a steampunk version of myself, other universe. And so I just named my account that. And this Iron Man is a steampunk Iron Man, essentially. And I try to do non-violent stuff. I don't like to do anything that's got gore or blood or anything like that. So this Iron Man, I made him a firefighter.
Oh,
so
okay, that's cool.
He's a steampunk firefighter, a steampunk firefighting Iron Man. That's kind of how I came up with that, and it came out of the time when I was kind of building my character of Euler. So. That
is awesome. I love the color palette of this. It's just I don't know. It definitely. I mean, I'm glad that you brought up steampunk, because I was trying to think of the word in my head, because that's exactly what it looked like to me. So you definitely nailed that 100% in my book. It looks awesome, and for this being relatively close to one of your first as an adult, I'm always jealous of all of you guys whose first looks so good. Mine didn't look so good, so kudos to you on that, because it is really awesome. The next one that I kind of wanted to bring up is your most recent diorama that you worked on, and then we'll get into the showcase in a moment. But it's this clock tower that you did, which is absolutely epic, and I'm only going to show a few of the pictures that you have on Instagram because people need to go check out your video. You did it in a vlog style video, and so you showed a little bit of your hometown, where you live, some just things that you enjoy about that town, which is cool, and I really appreciated that, and it kind of drew us into the details that you added into this particular piece. So the first question that I have, I don't recall seeing in the video that this is a direct representation of a building in your town, unless I missed it. It's not.
No, I just wanted to kind of integrate like my hometown feel with that, just to show that a lot of times people ask me, well, where does this come from, or how do you figure that out, or did you copy this? And no, it's really just a matter of focusing on the like we were talking about earlier. How was that made? This little thing.
Mm-hmm.
That gets you to want to create your own little thing, your own little detail. And so it's just kind of talking about the sort of mental path I've taken over time to get to where I come up with ideas like the clock tower and all the little pieces and details. It comes from a real place where I've kind of explored wondering how things like that scene were created,
So how did you make this stained glass window? Is this a printout?
So I figured you were going to ask that. So
Is this going to be a video coming someday?
Maybe in detail later. It's funny because people always ask me, why don't you talk about this, or why don't you share that? I'm like, I've actually shared almost everything if you watch my YouTube videos. But you have to actually pay attention to what I'm saying. Rather than just hoping for like a simple explanation, because like I said, I'm long-winded. I get into it, but it is an idea I had for a long time, and I was trying to figure out how to make it look good. Mm-hmm. And it's the exact same thing I used on my bat cave for the computer screens.
Oh, okay, okay.
I went into Photoshop and I measured out what I wanted. I sculpted the window size first in foam, and then I got the measurements. And then I built a Photoshop file that was the exact same size, and I literally drew the whole thing in Photoshop whenever I had a couple hours here, a couple hours there over the course of... It took a long time. And I took those files to a local printer, and they had them printed out on overhead...
Wow.
And so the way you make it on both sides, I have one printed forward and one printed backwards. And then stack them, you get a full image that's fully saturated with all the right color. So when you do one and you leave it, it actually looks really dim.
Sure.
But when you fully saturated, you get that. And the way you brighten it up is you take a piece of vellum. It's drafting medium, or some people use it for other things, but it's called vellum. It's better than white paper because it's a little bit more consistent. And you take vellum and you put it in between, and it suddenly gets a lot brighter.
Sure. But you still have some of that transparency, so the light's going to come through it.
Yeah, that's the white layer that you would have as your back Photoshop. You've just inserted it physically in between, and then that's how you get your light coming through.
Genius.
And you can image on both sides. So, and then I sandwich that in between two pieces of clear plexiglass.
I thought you were going to say between two pillows, but...
I mean, it'd be cool, but I don't think you'd be able to see it.
Those aren't pillows. Sorry, my child side is coming out. Well, I have to say that diorama is absolutely amazing. It's huge as well. So, I think so. Here's a picture of you. It's on a table, on a card table, but that's what, close to 3-4 feet tall.
It's 67.5 inches tall.
67.5. Well, you're gonna make me do the math.
It's 3.5 inches shorter than me.
Oh wow! Wow.
5 shorter than me.
That's amazing. So, I'm blown away at this piece. So people, go check out his YouTube if you're not already following him. Subscribe to him because this is amazing. I'm not going to give all the details here because that's not my place to do that. But there is one more detail before we get into the showcase that I wanted to touch on, and that is the tiny art experiment. I am super excited for this project that you put together. I'm going to let you explain it. I know a lot of the people that watch my show have already heard it, but they need to hear it as much as possible because I think this is going to be an absolutely epic project.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It actually blew up faster than I thought. So I just thought it would be a fun idea. And it's an idea I've had for several years, but I knew it probably wouldn't play out like I had hoped until my personal account had gotten a little bit bigger and had a little bit more reach. So basically, it's essentially a group diorama where we all make separate pieces. And it's kind of like a crowd-funded diorama, if you will, where we're all contributing a small piece to a larger idea. And that literally comes from my own inspiration from dioramas, which is Star Wars, because Star Wars is all the miniatures in Star Wars was a team of artists coming together, making things, putting it together to make this big world, this big miniature world that we all enjoyed. And so I'm like, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we do it worldwide with all the makers? And so everybody is open to be able to make essentially, for the most part, whatever they want within certain parameters. And we've got people making doors, we've got people making vehicles, we've got people making characters, we've got people making walls, we've got people making signs, and everything is going to be sent to me, to my workshop, and I'm going to compose it essentially. Everything that every artist contributes, and compose it into one cohesive piece that can hopefully be a little modular, move around a little bit. And I got 4 amazing photographers to agree to photograph whatever we make, and the project is completely voluntary. You're saying I'm going to give up my time for this, and it's just for the fun of it. I'm not going to take what people make and sell it or do anything with it. If you want me to give it to somebody or you want me to send it back, I'm happy to do that. It's just essentially an open forum project, and the theme is a Star Wars desert planet. So we want to create a Navarro or a Tatooine, or a Jakku type of feel, and we're waiting for the Hasbro HasLab Razor Crest starship that is 1/18 scale to be delivered, and I'm going to basically build the diorama so that is the centerpiece. And so we can have Jax Navarro, who's plastic action, and we can have Johnny, who's Sergeant Bananas, and Jason Yang, who's Work More or Less, and A1 Groundwalker. These are our 4 photographers. They're all huge Star Wars fans, and they're either going to come to my shop or I'm going to bring it to them in LA. Sure. And they're going to just go nuts, and we're just going to see what we can create.
I'm just super excited. I am going to be making a moisture evaporator. I'm way behind. I need to get my work done. When do people need to get that done by? When do I need to get that done by?
I said in my original proposal was September, because the Hasbro's Razor Crest is supposed to ship late fall, but I'm guessing that'll probably be delayed like everything else has been. Like, sure. All of our things are delayed. So if I can get everybody's pieces by the end of September, I think that'll work out, so I can start putting stuff together, and then when it arrives, I can kind of finish it hopefully by the end of the year. And I'm going to be, everything I do, when I do it, will be put on YouTube and on and on the Tiny Art Experiment Instagram account. And if anybody wants any of the footage, they're welcome to have it, and because it's about sharing. It's not about me, it's about everybody. So.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I'm super excited for it. Make sure that you're following Tiny Art Experiment on Instagram as well, because that's where all the action is on that project right now. And you're reposting people's work in progress pics quite often, so it's really cool. So we're going to transition now into the showcase. And so for those of you not familiar, since this is a new format, I asked Jordan to choose his top 5 dioramas from this week, and gave him some criteria. Hopefully it wasn't too restrictive, so that he could choose based off of what he likes and what draws his eye. And so we're going to go through that. I've also chosen 5, and we're going to go round robin. We're going to start with Jordan's first, starting with Valhalla Dio. Hopefully you've got the picture up on your end so that you remember what we're talking about. But what I want to know is first, what drew your eye to this? Because this one was going to be on my list as well. It's pretty epic.
The contrast of different tones of gray, like it's not all just the same gray, and the contrast in texture. So, you know, there's a lot of variation there, and so that I always appreciate that when somebody packs as much as possible into something. It really shows they value each thing that they're putting into their piece, whether it's the paint or an item. You know?
Exactly, I agree. One of the things that I really liked about this, number one, is it's a very unique presentation, in that it's basically like you scooped up the ground and are putting it up on a displayer in his hand. And again, the paint tones, amazing. I mean, this is just so cool. And it's not like it's chock full of tons of action or anything like that, but it definitely conveys a story with this, and then you throw some action figures in there. Wow, yeah. It's really cool.
A lot of artists do that, where, you know, we like to cut out vignettes from like real life. You know, like there's a lot of great artists. We'll see one later, I think, that did that really well too. And this is like, it's the same thing, but it's like a slightly different take. It's like Galactus reached down and just scooped up a chunk of the city into his hand. You know, that's kind of what I'm imagining when I see this, and it completely sells it. Like I like each surface has its own texture. Each surface has its own paint job, its own weathering that matches the thing that it is. And I think that's why my eye went to it, because there's so much contrast there, but it all makes it like cohesive and believable.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And then we've got a looks to be a custom Juggernaut as well.
Oh yeah.
Or at least the costume is custom.
Juggernaut that caused that destruction, I guess. Yeah.
All right. So my first, I chose Joe Dio's, and this is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Forgive me that I tend to always go with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff. It seems to be my go-to all the time. But this piece really struck me with the lighting and the fact that it's 2 layers. I don't know if you saw this one or not.
Hold it up here. Yeah. Oh, wow, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really like about dioramas and when folks are posting their work is the pictures that they take and how they complete that illusion of recreating a scene, be it a real scene or you create your own scene. I just love the ambiance of this picture with the details of the lighting, all of the props. I mean, it's crazy the amount of props and little details, like the little axe or whatever that happens to be that's stuck in the window. It's fun, and that's one of the reasons why I come back to some of the same artists, yourself included, because it's those details that just day in and day out, you guys are adding extra little pieces, little flair that, you know, steps up these pieces beyond what most people, especially beginners, are going to do. And that's one of the recommendations that I have for beginners is add more props. If you don't have all of the skills when it comes to the paints and even the sculpting, adding props and messing with the lighting can definitely do a lot for the dioramas.
Yeah, there's 2 things like that are sticking out to me, like you're saying, all of the things that have been added, and like what I have told people before, like, and I've noticed this myself, where I get to a point where I'm like, I don't know what to add, I don't know what to do. Come up with a story.
Yes.
Why is what's happening, or make something happen, and then you, I can add this, or I can change that, or I should move this, or I can come, and then you like the hammer in the window, like, how did that get there? Why is that there? And then you build out from that point, and you get a story, and then you start to add those details naturally as you find story points to fill in. And like you said with the lighting in this piece, that's like something that I kind of do with myself is I don't do a lot of stuff centralized around a figure, even though a lot of it's 4 figures, but I'll ask myself, where is this figure or the character this is going to be for? Where's the city? Where is the place? What's the atmosphere? What are the atmospherics? Like,
Yes.
Was this a wet environment? Was this a dry environment? And when you start asking those questions, you start to figure out what needs to be added for you to make, to be content with what you've created.
Exactly.
And the lighting, that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're like, I don't know what else to add, sometimes that means that you're done. We had a little technical difficulty. The call was dropped. We are back. We are recording, and we're going to continue on now with Jordan's next choice. This one is from, this always messes me up, from the Matt Cave. And this is some work in progress shots that he's got of, it looks like I'll let you kind of describe what it is that why you chose this one, what you like about it, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of topper or end piece to like some type of, kind of like what I made, like a Gothic tower or building. But the reason I like this is because it shows the versatility of foam. You can do everything in foam if you really, really want to, and I get questions pretty frequently where people ask, what did you 3D print? I don't 3D print anything.
No.
I have boxed up over there in the corner. I used it once when I bought it, and I had it back up. That was like 3.5 years ago. And so I always try to encourage people, like, don't let that discourage you from trying to explore how to use any material a different way. And foam, like, he's got a little gargoyle type thing. It's not really a gargoyle, but it's like a creature or a face, a corbel, and he's got different sizes and shapes of rocks. And it just, to me, it shows, if you learn to do everything you possibly can with one tool or one material before moving on or trying to make it easier for yourself, you'll be better off down the road, and you'll have a lot more skill and ability and flexibility. And I think this is essentially an example of probably where that'll take Matt here, as he continues to go, because his stuff's great.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the sentiment about the 3D printing stuff. While I do 3D print stuff, it definitely gets in the way, and it can slow a project down, because then you have to step away from the project and go in and 3D model it, or find something that someone else has modeled, print it off. If it fails, then you got to redo it. It's not the right scale. And so a lot of the times those little pieces, it's just, sculpt it out. If it's not perfect, so be it. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, I really like that too.
Encourage anybody from 3D printing either too, because I have no problem with 3D printing. But like you just said, I can model stuff in 3D. I have programs to do that. I did that in high school. But you're going to take just as much time modeling in 3D, and then it's going to take hours. And if it doesn't work, you got to figure out so like, to me, I'd rather, if it's something possible by hand, I'd love to try to know how to do it by hand. And I've found that many things I can actually make faster by hand now than I could 3D print them. So and some I can't, like fire hydrant, it's going to look better, faster 3D printed, but a mailbox I can do in like way faster than 3D printing, so.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm glad that you brought up the point about the sculpting, because I have a challenge coming up that I want to do with the community. So that's all I'm gonna leave us with on that, but it's something simple and fun and quick. So I just need to get that all coordinated. So but moving on to my next choice, which my next choice is from Krusty Crew. This piece struck me because it's so incredibly unique. It's not the typical scene that we see. This is literally a figure is popping out of the page of the comic book that we've got here. And oftentimes the pieces that I pick that I really like, I know nothing about the actual title. I don't know anything about the characters. I don't, even reading through the description, I still don't know what I'm looking at. But what I do know is I love it. I love the creativity. For all I know, this is we just stacked up a couple of books, and then the display is really this little portion here. I don't even necessarily care, because it just looks so cool. And I could be getting fooled buy a diorama that's really just some books stacked with a person, I don't care. It looks cool. I would want this on my shelf. So
Yeah,
I don't. There's not a lot else to really say about it other than when you get in a little bit deeper, you can see that they've got some, looks to be like he's jumping through a body. And it's, you know, gruesome. I myself, I also don't do gruesome style dioramas, but I can certainly appreciate the skill that comes into it. And look at that little detail on his foot. You can see part of the page is stuck to his foot, which is crazy. I mean, that's just awesome.
Yeah, that's like I want to say wacky, but it's not wacky. It's like, I'm trying to think of a word for just like explosive kind of. It's cool because I've seen things done with other objects, but I don't think I've seen somebody do a figure through a book, which is crazy because this is definitely an example of don't be afraid to try something new because it might turn out way better than you even thought. And that's just like literally taking pop-up book to a whole nother level.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought of is pop-up book, like to the 10th level. So that just drew my eye. So moving to the next one, which is your next, and I believe this is your third. This one's coming from Sage JDG, and this was going to be on my list as well. What drew your eye to this particular piece?
Let me open it here. Yeah. Again, I'm a big fan of tone and paint tone, and I actually complimented him on some other stuff he did a while ago for the same reason that I'm attracted to this. I like the tones that are here. Like I mean, the single light source I think that he's using on it too is probably helping accentuate it as well, but they're colors that you would otherwise think are probably super mundane, but the way they're combined and where he's chosen to put accents and cut the walls, the composition is just fabulous. Like just he's got enough in there for it not to be too busy, but enough for you to spend time looking at it. And the color choices and the tonality of how it's kind of shaded through how he probably did washes and layering the paints, absolutely love it. Like, this is the type of thing that like I would try to do if I did something like this. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I agree. The washes that you brought up, I mean, I don't know how many he does when he's putting on, but I know some of these folks are putting tons of layers of thin washes to get that look, and it really goes a long way to make this piece really stand out. And then when you get in closer and you can see all of those little color tones, it's just fun to see. That's what I love about this art and all of you guys is the time that you put in to make these things that just, you drive along the road and you'd see this same building and you'd be like, that's a building, great. But yeah, when you bring it and you can put it onto your desk in a 1/12 scale and you can be like, that looks like a building that's on my desk.
Yeah,
it just floors me.
This is a perfect example of like what I was trying to encourage people to do in my vlog, is like, look at the things that you would think were totally pointless. Try to replicate that, because you're amazing how many things you'll figure out and learn while you try to do it. This is a perfect example of that.
My next one is coming from Sibo Crafts, and so that in the description it says rock, paper, scissors. This is the new shop from Alex Kidd DX. Video game sounds like, again, another one that I have no idea what it is, but the whimsy of this, I guess, and maybe whimsy isn't the right word, but it just feels fun. It feels, now knowing that it's kind of video game, it doesn't quite feel like Nintendo video game, but I don't know, I just really like this piece. And then they've got a source picture from the game here, which is what this represents. I don't know, it just makes me happy to see this. I like the little thatch roof. I like the little smokestack that they've got on there. The fact that they've kind of packaged it together with this little round base, it's just simple and clean, and I don't know, I just like it. It brings nostalgia to me, and I have no connection to this at all. I
think I know what you're getting at. Like the mood is very sort of childlike and comforting. And
Yes.
I think bright green grass and the thatch roof, and then like the non-threatening shapes, like
Right.
the round stuff. I think it's probably like I get the same vibe. So yeah, it's very cool.
For all I
Very
know,
cool.
this could be a title where there's blood and guts in the game. I could be completely wrong, but
it's adorable.
yeah, but you know what? So be it. All right, moving on to your next one. This one is coming from Diorama Quill's Hobby. And go ahead and kind of tell me what drew your eye to this, because I think this is somewhat of a prop, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Or at least part of a dio.
When I first looked at this, I was trying to figure out, are parts of this 3D printed, or was this a kit? And as I scrolled through it, I realized this is all hand done, and some of it is scrap parts. And so I see styrene, I see little metal pieces from what looks like maybe some type of mechanical tool for the interior handles on the door, and super glue. And this is very indicative of sometimes when I try to add accents to things, and like with the way that film model makers will find quick details or greeblies, they'll have bins of little parts and pieces they can cut off and break things and glue to add detail. And he's done it intentionally. He or she, I don't know, I apologize, but they've done it intentionally and with the layout having purpose. So you can tell what it is, but it's literally made of found objects. I think another diorama artist that does that extremely well is Chang Hank, from South Korea, and he makes like unfathomable things out of like trash, and you're like, wow. And this, I think, is just a great example of that. It's a few small things done really, really well put together, and again, you get this what seems mundane, but there's so much care put into it.
Yep. Johnny Simpleton is another one that does that kind of garbage put together. You said it more eloquently than I did, but you find all those little pieces that everybody else would pitch in the garbage, and he puts it together into these just amazing things. I very much appreciate that skill set. So my next one, this is coming from Wakas Bazaar. I actually haven't seen posts from you in a little while, so it's good to see a new post back up and going. And this one it's just one picture, but it definitely drew my eye a lot because of, number one, the uniqueness, the different layers of earth that we've got right on the edge. It drew my eye. I love this tree. For those that have kind of followed my channel at all, you saw the tree that I tried to concoct. So I'm always interested to see other people's trees that they come up with, the vegetation. I'm not really sure what Kimitsu no Yeba is, but I think they nailed it.
Whatever you do, you did it right.
Exactly, because I couldn't say that they didn't. But I like the colors. I like the path. I'm kind of on a kick for not just straight Marvel Legends style dioramas right now. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's the uniqueness of whatever this happens to be. The dirt is so realistic looking. I've really gotten into that like uber realistic looking diorama, and I think this one's getting very, very close into that realm of realism.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about the edge of the ground there coming down into the water. Like, I can tell that this is probably set in a farming village, because if you look at the way that the dirt is coming off of the ground, that it looks like it was like hooked off by a tool and they've been water through it. So like just something like that, you'd think, well, that's lame and boring, but it actually tells me this is probably a story where this character is in some type of farming village where they have to run water through levees. And then you've got like a tree back there. Man, trees and shrubbery and all of that is a whole nother animal, because you can spend so much time and there's thousands and thousands of ways, and that one just turned out beautiful. Like the deep green and the tones, I keep saying tone, but the tones, the contrast it creates at the ground is really, it's great.
All right, so I believe we are now on to your last This one is coming from Mista C 5050, and there's a couple of different posts, but I figured we'd start with the one that kind of shows the majority of it. Why don't you go ahead and kind of walk us through what drew your eye to this one? This is the one that has the picture of Batman on the front, and then we'll kind of go from there.
When I found his stuff a while ago, I was like, this guy knows what's going on with stone. Each stone, if you look at his pre-painted pictures when he hasn't painted something, he's literally taking the time to make each stone look a certain way. And I'm sure to him it's become second nature, where he's going pretty quick because it always becomes that way eventually. But every single stone looks different from every single other stone. And zoomed out, you might not realize that. But to me, that's somebody who really, really cares about what they're doing. And they've taken the time to probably use different tools. Like, say, some of the details are pressed in, some of the details are carved in. And I've, explored a lot of this myself. And just the fact that they're taking the time to make each stone look a certain way, just, I don't know. I can feel the love in the hobby right here. And it just looks so well textured beyond what you would think somebody would want to put into a diorama. And so, if I ever had to do like an enormous project that was focused around stone, I'd probably be calling up like, hey, can you work on this with me?
Yeah. I've got one of the posts that you sent to me is of him putting the paint on, a wash of kind of black on there, but you had mentioned the textures of these stones. I mean, I don't know how they're getting that very specific texture on each of those individual stones, because they each have a slightly different pattern, which is unbelievable. And I had asked him before, are you doing these individually and then gluing them on? Some yes, some no. It's really cool to see, and I love seeing these behind the scenes to be able to get a little bit of a picture as to how this is actually being constructed.
I've thought of methods to be able to quickly do a lot of stuff like this. I haven't really executed them myself. I have some suspicions about how I think he may be doing more than one at once that end up looking different, but I don't want to guess, and I'll let him maybe do that on his own channel. But I think he's probably doing what I've thought about doing, where you're creating a texture that is completely different as you're doing it, and then you're assembling pieces together. But it was really I don't want to give it away, but probably a group effort while he was doing it, to get the variation and not have to spend like an hour on each stone.
Okay, well, now we're gonna have people guessing in the comments what you're thinking.
I was him, and maybe he'll tell you, because I don't want, if he's got some awesome thing he wants to explain someday, I don't want to take that away from him.
All right, so that was your last. My last diorama, this one's coming from Dioramas, was a guest last week. And if you haven't already, go check out his YouTube channel. He does a full breakdown of this piece. It's a Deadpool broken highway diorama, and it embodies that scene from Deadpool 2 where now I'm losing my train of thought on that, but basically when they're fighting Cable and everything gets destroyed from the truck and whatnot, and this is just what it just is a perfect representation. So make sure that you check out that video, because he shows how he did some of this stuff and some of the test work that he did with trying to figure out different ways of doing the cracks. That was another thing that was just really cool to see. This goes back to kind of what you've said over, is the tones, the color tones are really, really nice to, not just look like your standard, one or two colors that you can just dry brush on and call it good. I mean, there's a lot of different color tones to a gray black asphalt surface, and then you throw in the debris and the cracking and all of that. It's just super cool. And the little column, those are just two little Pringle tubes, repurposed, And like you've said before, to be able to take junk and turn it into art, I really appreciate that. And that's one of the things that I'm shifting away for my tiny art experiment project. I was going to do it 3D printed. I've decided I'm wasting too much time trying to get that figured out. I'm just going to do it out of foam, and we're just going to figure it out from there.
Go nuts.
Exactly. I can't go wrong, because if it looks dumb, just add a little paint or a little spackle or something, and it's just going to look really good. So I don't know. I really enjoy this, and I am so glad that I was able to have you on the show. It's something that I've wanted to do for the last couple of years, is start having guests on the show, and now that we're doing it, I don't want to do any more episodes with just me, because I think being able to talk to you guys and get your thoughts on specific dioramas that maybe I wouldn't have thought of, or to be able to bounce things off. You know, there's some things that you brought up about some of the dioramas that I probably wouldn't have brought up, and I wouldn't have thought of, and I might not have showcased because, you know, I wasn't thinking that. So I very much appreciate the fact that you were willing to share your thoughts on these dioramas, and more so that you were willing to share a little bit about yourself. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm always open to talking. I mean, when I first got started, I was like a little nervous about sharing things with people years ago, but the more people ask, the more comfortable I get. And so I'm happy, and I'm sure most other people would love to be on here and chit chat and talk about what they love about everything everybody does. Because the more and more I talk to people in the community, the more and more I find out everybody looks at everybody's stuff and everybody loves it. So, you really can't go wrong when you start sharing and talking together,
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Well, sir, we're gonna have to wrap this up. Otherwise, people are gonna be like, well, I mean, geez, it's been like 25 hours that you've been doing this. At some point, you gotta just say goodbye. But where can people? We've mentioned it already a few times, but let's mention it again, because that's the YouTube way. Where can people find Oilers Workshop?
Yeah, Instagram, it's at Oilers_workshop. If you want to email me about work or commission or something, it's just Oilers Workshop, one word, @gmail.com. My channel is Oilers Space Workshop, I believe, or one word, on YouTube. You find it right away. Yeah, that's all the places. I am on Facebook now, but I just kind of have it as a proxy for my Instagram. You're going to get
Sure.
more on Instagram. I also have a Patreon if you want to support my workshop, and you want more of this type of thing, more one-on-one. I do a lot more conversation with my supporters over there, and they ask a lot of very specific questions, and we get into it over there. So
awesome. Well, Jordan, again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share with me and with the community all of the amazing things that you do. I will put links down in the description so that you can get to all of his social and YouTube and whatnot. Make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all of that other crap that, if we're being honest, I would really like you to do that, because it helps. If nothing else, it helps my ego a little bit. So thank you guys. Looking forward to maybe another guest coming up soon, hopefully. Cliffhanger. I will see you guys in the next episode.
See you later.